Hello, everyone. Welcome. So I'm Rob Annan. I'm President and CEO of Genome Canada, and I am just thrilled to be joining you, moderating today's session. I'm joining you virtually from Ottawa, Ontario, the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. We at Genome Canada have hosted a few events recently, a few roundtables, and we were fortunate to have Anishinaabe elder Claudette Commanda from Kitigan-Zibi nearby join us and address the kind of the broad community as we were kicking off these conversations. And she really urged us to engage in those conversations with humility and with open ears. I think it's some great advice that has really stuck with me and something that I'll be seeking to model here today. So today, as you can see here on the screen, the title for today's session is Bringing the Bio-Revolution to Canada towards a Pan-Canadian Genomics Strategy. It's going to be a great conversation. We're very lucky to be joined by four esteemed panelists. I'll be introducing them in just a few minutes. Quickly, this is a little rundown of how things are going to go. We'll do the introductions. I'm going to provide some brief opening context remarks. And then we're going to have a bit of a fireside chat with the panelists. This is really meant to be interactive, conversational. And then we're going to move to a Q&A with all of you joining us here online. So I do encourage everybody to submit your questions via the platform, to engage. I know there's a discussion forum you can engage in, so feel free to throw ideas in there as well. And we're going to be conducting a couple of polls right off the top here, just to get a clear sense of who's in our virtual room, what you're bringing to the table in terms of context understanding for genomics. And then I really do encourage all of you to engage in both the Q&A and the discussions. So let me just maybe move to introduce our panelists right off the top here. First, I want to introduce Dr. Naveed Aziz. He serves as the Chief Executive Officer of CGen, which is Canada's national platform for genome sequencing and analysis. It has nodes at the Hospital for Sick Kids in Toronto, at McGill University in Montreal, and Canada's Michael Smith Genome Sciences Centre in Vancouver. Dr. Aziz's leadership has enabled CGen to fuel Canadian research and innovation and played a key role in the advancement of technological developments within the field of genomics. So I know that he's a very passionate advocate for genomics, big data, open science. So we're really thrilled to have Naveed join us today. Also joining us is Dr. Sarah Jenna. She is the co-founder and CEO of My Intelligent Machines, a leader in artificial intelligence and systems biology. Sarah has a PhD in cell and structural biology from the University of Marseille in France, and a junior Canadian research chair in integrative genomics and cell signaling at UQAM. She's the co-founder and CEO of My Intelligent Machines, and as such, she translates all that expertise into state-of-the-art integrative genomics and systems biology to attend to the needs of a variety of users. So really pleased to have Sarah joining us today. Third, we have Dr. Chinetta Jones, who is bringing more than 2 decades of experience in science and health research strategy, funding, and policy in the US, in the UK, and Europe, as well as here in Canada. Chinetta is currently Vice President Research at the Michael Smith Health Research BC, where she oversees the Foundation's research portfolio, guiding their strategy, their funding programs, and strategic partnerships to maximize BC's investments in health research. Previous to this, Chinetta held executive leadership role at the Wellcome Trust in London, where she provided strategic leadership to maximize the impact of their funding and strategic initiatives. So welcome, Chinetta. Thanks for joining us. And finally, last but not least, we have Dr. Steve Shearer, who is a world-renowned genome science researcher. He is now Chief of Research and holds the Northbridge Chair in Pediatric Research at the Hospital for Sick Kids and the University of Toronto. He's Director of the U of T McLaughlin Center, as well as the Center for Applied Genomics at Sick Kids. His team has contributed to a landmark discovery of global gene copy number variation as a common form of genetic variation in human DNA, and is a global leader in genomics research in autism spectrum disorder and a variety of other human diseases. So welcome, Steve, and thanks for joining us. So as you can see, we have an esteemed panel, and I promise we're going to get to them, but it is my responsibility to provide a bit of an opening context here. So a few words of introduction. I'm privileged to lead Genome Canada, which was created 20 years ago. It was created really in the shadow of the Human Genome Project, which certainly was a time of great hope and promise and discovery for genomics. Of course, much has changed in those 20 years. Back then it took an international consortium 15 years and a couple $1 billion to sequence a single human genome, whereas now a single lab can do that in a few days for a few $1,000s. So now instead of collaborating on the description of a single reference genome for a given species, teams are collaborating to analyze and compare thousands of genomes using tools including big data and artificial intelligence to unlock complex genetic interactions. And genomics has also expanded from a science based solely in sort of DNA to one that encompasses a number of other molecular and cellular systems, and it integrates with a variety of tools of synthetic biology, gene editing, mRNA technologies, and so on. All of this progress was really underlined over the last year when the world was struck by the COVID-19 pandemic. Genomics was a major engine in the medical response globally. Sequencing the virus within days of its isolation meant that we could get a head start on producing vaccines, which we did globally in record time. Ongoing viral sequencing meant that we could track the virus as it moved around the world and particularly track the emergence of the variants of concern. And Genomics supported large projects worldwide, including here in Canada, that really tackled sequencing the genomes of COVID patients, helping us to understand why the disease response varies so much between individuals and uncovering clues with regards to things like long COVID. Canada was able to participate in these responses because of 20 years of investment and support in genomics, led in part by Genome Canada, but also with investments from provinces and universities, hospitals, and others right across the ecosystem. All that investment, all of that work built hard infrastructure, soft infrastructure, and supported the talent and skills that allowed us to move quickly when COVID hit. As we say at Genome Canada, the rapid response was 20 years in the making. But while we were able to draw from considerable strengths, the pandemic also revealed some underlying challenges that have accumulated over these 20 years. We do have a fragmented ecosystem in Canada. This is true for health research and research more broadly, but it's certainly true in genomics research. We also have systemic challenges with regards to data sharing across jurisdictions, a major issue both during the COVID pandemic and more broadly when it comes to genomic research. Chronic underfunding in some areas has left Canada falling behind again, sometimes in crucial areas related to health, the environment, and otherwise. And genomics has still not fully grappled with the historic underrepresentation of Indigenous peoples and other equity-deserving groups in both our research databases and in projects. So there was good news in Budget 2021 when the federal government announced the intention to develop a pan-Canadian genomic strategy with a $400 million allocation tied to it. This strategy is really meant to be an opportunity to bring these disparate pieces together into a shared collective effort. It's also an opportunity to identify areas of strength in Canada where we can build and lead globally, as well as identify gaps where we really do need to invest. This effort is being ably led by the federal government, including a strong team at ICED. Nonetheless, we believe strongly that we as a community, a research community and a user community have a responsibility to get together and talk about the key issues, to come together in conversations like this, to share perspectives, and to support the development of this strategy execution. So today's panel is really meant to be part of that broader conversation. As I said, I encourage everyone in the audience to participate in that conversation. And we believe strongly that this conversation, while certainly informed by the experts working, say, at the coalface, requires all of us to engage, including the non-experts who might be joining us out of interest today. So I've got lots of opinions about all of these things, but that's not what you paid to hear. Let's get to the panelists and get some of their perspectives on this. I'm going to start off with a question to Naveed. Naveed, when we're thinking about the future of genomics and the Pan-Canadian strategy, what do you see as some of the foundational elements in the ecosystem, whether data or infrastructure or what have you, that we should be considering as sort of vital supports as we deliver maximum impacts in Canada and contribute to international efforts?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks for the intro. So just looking at the poll and the diversity of the audience of the sector and expertise, I think I'll start by saying that in the last 20 years, we have seen the metamorphosis of genetics into large-scale or big data science called genomics. Genomics has revolutionized how we study biology, whether it's in the field of medicine, agriculture, environment, for example. Right? So genomics has also provided the opportunity to bring multidisciplinary approaches, allowing seemingly divergent fields of science to converge, including chemistry, physics, engineering, social sciences. And most of this new era or ability is deeply rooted into what we mentioned, what you kind of mentioned earlier in your question and in your remarks, and it's to do with the fundamental elements of the ecosystem, right? What do we need? Which to me is the fact that big science is and will always continue to be underpinned by access to and use of big data. That's just a fundamental requirement. We've all heard the phrase, data is the new oil. But we have to remember that oil is a diminishing resource, whereas data or use of data intrinsically it has an additive effect, right? The more we use and share data, the more we amplify this impact. So coming to the question, in my opinion, there are 3 or 4 core elements that will impact how we operate within the genomics ecosystem in the near and far future. And within those elements, I think first one obviously is data generation at a large scale. I think there is not much argument against the fact that Canada has lagged behind in generating large-scale data, population-wide data set, similar to other countries like UK, US, Israel, or even smaller European and Middle Eastern countries. Second is the stewardship of that data. So data generation, fine, but how do we manage that data? What that includes how we share the generated data while keeping essential aspects of data privacy, data security in mind. The more we share the data, the more it will have the impact. Third area that we need to consider is technology development. We have to stay ahead of the requirements being put on us by pushing the limits of genomic science. And last but equally important is the talent development. I, in fact, believe that probably this is the most important element when we look at the future of genomics and research in Canada or elsewhere. This, of course, includes the conscious effort to develop a diverse talent pool in Canada and provide equal and equitable opportunity to everyone to take advantage of this amazing Canadian diverse population. So before I wrap up my opening remarks, I would like to make one point very clear. When we talk about the future of genomics in Canada, we are talking about further building on what we have today. For the past 2 decades, as you mentioned, Rob, the federal and provincial governments in Canada have made significant investments in genomic science in Canada through Genome Canada, CIHR, of course, CFI, and others. The fact that organizations like CGen were envisioned and exist today is because CFI and Genome Canada had made it part of its mission to support a world-class infrastructure like CGen that supports genomic science in Canada by operating with a mission of enhance Canada's national capacity for genome sequencing and analysis, by accelerating next-generation sequencing solutions, and by supporting Canada's national and international projects in sequencing, databasing, and science. At the same time, at the core of CGen activities is developing the next generation of genomics talent pool. So coming back to your key question of strategy to support maximal genomics impact in Canada, we have to build on some of these elements and take advantage of Canada's strengths. Canada's strengths that are rooted in scientific excellence and the leadership role Canadian scientists have played in areas like cancer, autism, Global Alliance for Genomics and Health, and some of the others. Thank you, Rob. I'll stop here.
That's great. Thanks, Naveed. That's a really great overview to kick off. I think I'll turn, Steve, to you for the next question here. And as really a global research leader, I wonder if you can provide a few words on what you see as Canada's sort of strengths, areas of competitive advantage, let's say, that we could sort of leverage around impacts in Canada as well as internationally, where there might be some opportunities to do more, say, across sectors or connect some dots, and maybe some gaps that we might want to fill. So yeah, maybe some strengths and potential weaknesses as you see it, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here. I thought I would just start with an opening comment and then make some more targeted responses to your question. I think it's an interesting time for genomics, not just in Canada, but worldwide. In a way, we're poised at a point where maybe artificial intelligence was 5 or 10 years ago. Or if you think about a company like Shopify, maybe 5, 10 years ago, I think genomics is ready to just cross that threshold and just go and impact everybody's daily lives, actually. And I think the impact we're only going to start to understand in the next few years. It's really hard to predict how important this technology, this science will be. So, and I would also, just like you did, argue that the pandemic has served as kind of an inflection point where, in fact, the impact of genomics has been felt pretty much on a daily basis by all of our citizens and many citizens around the world, both through the derivation of the vaccine based on the genome sequence and, of course, through testing, which is all genomics based. So, given that these opening comments and the fact now that, when I teach my courses here at the University of Toronto, I teach the first year class that essentially the experiments you perform are really only limited by the creativity of the individual, of the student. And we can now read or sequence, we can write or synthesize, or we can edit or correct or repair genomes almost at will. So we can kind of do whatever we want biologically. So we have to think about this very carefully, what we want to do and how we're going to do it. So with those opening comments, I do think Canada is very well positioned to leverage for delivering impact for these three reasons. And the first really is that we have a very highly talented genomics workforce in Canada. And this has arisen, as both you and Naveed mentioned, through some very wise investments the government of Canada has made over the years, past 2 decades, through CFI and Genome Canada in the area of genomics in particular. I really do believe, and I would argue, that this is our greatest strength, but it's also our Achilles heel. Many of the people we train get recruited away to the United States and to Europe and in the biotech sector in previous days. So we spend a lot of time training really top-notch people, but in fact, their ideas and their talents often disappear relatively quickly. That's a Canadian characteristic. We have to deal with that. We have to do better, but we really do have a very highly talented workforce here in Canada. And I would challenge all of us on the line and the funders and everybody across Canada that we need to do better to keep this talent within Canada, but we also have to challenge the talent itself. If they're trained here, they should be trying to stay in Canada, both through starting their own companies, generating infrastructure through institutions like I sit in here at SickKids and universities, et cetera. So it works both ways. We have to create the environment together as a team. The second point is that there is actually now a significant investment in biotech happening in Canada. We've waited a long time for this moment. It's happening, and now is the time. And I've actually been at 3 meetings earlier today that were, related to translational aspects of research happening here at the Hospital for Sick Children, and all 3 of them, ranging from discovery-based to translational to actually drug-based developments, use genomics in the applications along the way at different stages. So genomics really is the engine for biotechnology, and it touches on it in many different ways, not just discovery, but also in assessment, checking, quality control, and getting it out the door. So now is the time. We need to make sure we get this talent into the right place, keep our ideas, and keep the money coming into Canada to really take it across the threshold. At the same time, we're going to have to strike a balance to make sure the next generation of ideas come forward through continued investment in basic research, because this is the driver for maintaining our own intellectual property and talent here. And then just the last, very quickly, the third comment is, we're in a unique position. We're just like everything else between our past, which is largely through Europe, at least historically here, and sitting next to the largest economy in the world, the United States. And I always see genomics as being in its adolescent phase. And I think we've made a lot of the right decisions. And if we make the right decisions and a few more decisions in the right direction in the next few years, I think this is going to be the driver of the Canadian economy. And we have, it's a huge country geographically, but it's a small country population-wise. And we have some of the world leaders from the Human Genome Project days in our country, very well connected people, network people. And I think it's time we bring those people to the same table to kind of plot out what this genomic strategy is going to look like, and draw on all of our connections, all of our knowledge and wisdom, and hedge a bet of how this is going to play out in the next couple of years. It's going to be revolutionary. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Great comments, great perspective. So let's move then next to Sarah. So we talked, Steve mentioned a couple of things here about, talent moving across borders and the ability of starting companies here in Canada. Here, Sarah, I think you'll have plenty to say on those issues. Maybe I can just ask you to comment on the strategy and how it can actually help support innovative companies in Canada, how we can align with some of the other priority areas the government has flagged, including artificial intelligence as a key strategic driver, and how those can become a competitive advantage for us on the industrial side.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rob. And really thanks for the organization actually to invite me here. I'm the only industry representative, so I'll make my best to be representative actually of this industry. I will echo actually my colleagues saying that, of course, and as you said, Canada is recognized as a leader in genomics research thanks to Genome Canada and the technological platform that were developed over the last 20 years, actually. Now, while one of the GC mandate is to connect idea and people across public and private sector, this connection does not necessarily translate into mature technology yet that are used in hospitals, farm, or agro companies. After more than 20 years of active research in genomics, we can see, actually, you'll agree with me, we can see the world moving from genomic bringing knowledge on living organism and an ecosystem to more practical application. And I really think that we're now ready to move into industrial phase of genomics. So how these translate practically? So all governments in the world are preparing to have sequencing data generated as part of the standard care. This is not tomorrow, but we see that coming, right? To support diagnostic, to be able to step into precision medicine, giving the right treatment to the right patient at the right time, at the right dose, etc. In agriculture, we see that move also. Global warming and objective to develop more eco-responsible agriculture requires commercially available tools to select the right breed for specific environment and to adapt care and agriculture methodologies to specific breeds. To attain these objectives, industrial products leveraging genomic data need to be developed, tested, and implemented in hospitals, farms, biotechs, and agro companies. Genome Canada has the ability to help moving these plans forwards to help companies build and test these industrial products. Most of the companies that I will consider here are medtech companies developing medical equipment and support diagnostic algorithms for precision medicine. We have also digital pharmas and AI company like My Intelligent Machines, developing algorithms from genomic data to help develop drugs and increased efficacy and biomarkers that could be used in precision medicine. Agtech company using genomic data also exists to maximize the animal health and also plant breeding. Now, most of these companies, like MIMS or university spin-off, and as Stephen said, we are building these companies based on all this expertise that was built over the past 20 years in academia. And MIMS is an example of that. I'm former Canada research chair and just founded the company 5 years ago. Now, how do we bring all these things together to help these companies? Because these companies are a natural output and results of all this investment that we made over the past years. So the initial phase of product development for these companies is generating this proof of concept, and usually is done in collaboration with academic lab. And this is quite well covered right now by the GAP program, for example, from GC. And this is generating already a lot of patents that that actually are provided to a superior level when compared to a lot of countries in the world. So we're going very, 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 very well on that. And GC has already a huge impact in there. Now, the next step is a little bit more problematic, and it's really developing and testing an industrial product for precision medicine and agriculture. And this phase requires, particularly for data-driven tools, so that we get access to a lot of genomic data. The current issues faced by the industrial community to do that is, as Rob mentioned it, dispersion of these data sources, the heterogeneity of the structure of the databases, the fact that most of the time the process that has been implemented to access these data are built from an academic lab and not easily adaptable to the industrial context. The size of the data set was usually too small and not sufficiently representative of the Canadian population. So the translation of all this research into tools that could be used in pharma, in hospitals, in biotech, in farms, and in agro companies will really take place when we will address these issues. And some ideas of things that needs to be done. So, a centralized access portal for data generated as part of GC project, an homogenized format of these data, access rules that are adapted to the corporate sector, larger data sets, and most important, representative of the Canadian population. And which will bring additional challenges that are faced by the UK Biobank, for example, which means that you will need to have infrastructure that are able to process petabytes of data, which is, of course, a technological challenge that, as Navid said, in terms of infrastructure, there is a big focus that needs to be done there. So in summary, the take-home message here is that I think we need a closer collaboration between academic, GC, and industry to make sure that Canada is really staying and becoming a world leader in genomics in this industrial era, in a new phase where all this research in genomics is translated in a product that is used in hospitals for health, to improve health of patients, and in agtech company in agriculture to improve agriculture. So, and MIMS is ready for that. A lot of the company, and actually all the companies that are in AI space, technology space, and genomics space in Canada will be extremely happy to contribute and help the organization GC to reach this goal. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for those remarks. And we'll be coming back to a number of those themes, I'm sure. So now let me turn to Janetta. And Janetta, you get to clean up here after all of these really sort of stimulating remarks. I think, your perspective as a science policy and research leader, particularly with international experience, perhaps gives you a bit of a perspective on maybe some of the key learnings or pieces Canada can incorporate from other national or international kind of strategies or organizations. So I wonder if you could maybe speak a little bit to, from a funding perspective, what we should be considering when it comes to supporting the strategy based on some of the international comparators.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rob. If you'll indulge me, I'm going to offer 5 lessons supported by 5 examples, and as you said, from a 100,000-mile high view. The first lesson I'll offer is number 1, increase national investment in and the prioritization of research and innovation. And the example I'm going to give is actually China's research and innovation strategy. In 2006, China announced a national plan for science and technology development that included targets for R&D expenditure as a share of GDP. 10 years on from launching their plan, China outspent the European Union in R&D and was on track to overtake the US in R&D spending. And over the last decade, the senior-most officials in China government reinforced the message that innovation through science and technology was a key national priority for China. And this shows through a number of their contributions in genomics, material sciences, nanotechnologies, and others. Just this year, the United Nations reported that science, technology, and innovation have become synonymous with economic competitiveness. And over the last 5 years, they reported that global research spending outpaced the growth of the global economy. Almost half of the increase in research intensity as a measure of GDP was driven by China alone. Looking at the trends in R&D across a variety of socioeconomic, geopolitical, environmental contexts, the UN then advised that governments will not only need to spend more on R&D, they will also need to invest these funds strategically. And this entails taking the long-term view, aligning their economic, digital, environmental, industrial, and agricultural policies, among others, to ensure that these are mutually reinforced. Lesson number 2 is foster open science and open innovation through international partnership and collaboration. And the Human Genome Project is an excellent example. It was a scientific tour de force carried out by science teams around the world. And because of widespread international cooperation and a commitment to open science, as well as, of course, advances in genomics and computing technology, a rough draft of the genome was jointly announced by Bill Clinton and Tony Blair, who declared that the genome sequence should have unencumbered access to all researchers who wish to research the sequence. There has not been a commitment to open science and open innovation. The rapid genomic surveillance of the COVID virus, the development of the effective vaccines may not have been possible today. Lesson number 3, back bold ideas to deliver transformative discoveries and innovation. An example I'll give here is the US DARPA. US DARPA is an agency that has collaborated with academia, industry, and government partners to undertake transformative research and development projects. And some notable achievements have led to the internet, GPS, automated voice recognition, again, to name a few. The DARPA funding model has often been cited as the most effective funding model for supporting groundbreaking research and innovation. And that's because it's characterized by little bureaucracy and little hierarchy, open-ended, flexible funding, and the permission to fail fast and to fail big. The 4th lesson I'm going to offer is invest in future forward-looking strategies on longer time horizons. An example that I'll give is the UK National Institute for Health Research. In January of last year, the UK led the world in conducting the largest clinical trial for COVID. The clinical trial recruited tens of thousands of patients from over 100 sites across the UK, and within the first 100 days of the trial, dexamethasone was found to reduce mortality in hospitalized patients with severe disease. An estimated 1 million lives globally were saved by dexamethasone. This was possible because the UK government launched a health research strategy nearly a decade and a half prior to the COVID pandemic. And this strategy created the UK National Institute for Health Research, whose mission was improving the health and wealth of the nation through research. And since then, NIHR supported research through strategic long-term investments, including research infrastructure, research networks, research centers, and, as we've heard, training and development, a highly skilled talent force. Just this year, NIHR published their new strategy, and they claim that their successes have been enabled by significant long-term investment in translational, clinical, and applied research infrastructure. And the last lesson, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to offer is seek multilateral, multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary coordination and cooperation to achieve the greatest of outcomes. In 2014, disease outbreak in 3 countries resulted in more than 28,000 cases of disease and more than 11,000 deaths. It was a fast-growing outbreak with deadly consequences that affected not only the sick, but anyone who came in contact with them. And at the time, there was no treatment, no vaccine. The average fatality rate was 50%. There were scientific challenges. Vaccine candidate, but the safety and efficacy had never been tested in humans. Lack of ethical and regulatory approvals. Little to no clinical research capacity, clinical research infrastructure to support clinical trials. There were political challenges characterized by ongoing regional conflicts and wars. There were public health challenges, health systems, social challenges, and economic challenges. More than $1 billion spent to control the outbreaks in just 3 countries. Thanks to a coordinated multilateral effort at international, national, regional, and community levels, as well as research collaborations across the sciences, social sciences, and public health, a vaccine was found to be 100% effective in preventing the disease, and more than 250,000 of lives were saved. And if that story sounds familiar to you, it should, because I just told the story of the Ebola epidemic in West Africa. But it might sound familiar to you also because it mirrors what we've just experienced with COVID. Remarkably, following the Ebola epidemic, the World Health Organization and the World Bank Group published a report declaring that the world was wholly unprepared to handle a global pandemic, Little did they know that they were foreshadowing the COVID pandemic that would break out in the same year. I'll end there.
That was awesome, Jeanette. That was great. You could have gone 5 more if you had them, but those were 5 great points. Thank you for sharing them. I want to come back. I think what I'm going to do first, right off the bat, is ask the panelists if there was anything from the opening remarks they'd like to pick up on. But before I do, I'm going to just go to the audience and remind people that the discussion forum is open for thoughts and ideas. Questions, if you have any questions or topics you'd like to see discussed by the panelists or addressed by the panelists, please drop them into the appropriate spot there on the Q&A. So I think, so obviously some great opening remarks. I think this idea, I really like, Naveed, your idea of data as the new oil, but unlike oil, it doesn't diminish. It actually increases in value the more you use it. Data kept coming up over and over again. I think we could maybe come back to that. I think this idea of the, certainly the scale of investment that Shanetta talked about, not only China's massive investments, but now what we're seeing in the United States in terms of reaction to that with major investments as kind of an economic driver. As an example, I think you can't have a CSPC panel without talking about Canada's terrible performance and investment in R&D as a percentage of GDP, which remains down, I think, around 1.6 or 1.7%, well below OECD average, never mind leaders. So I think that's also important. I think we can pick up a little bit on Sarah's points as well about how to create a healthy ecosystem that supports company growth. And again, coming back to the data. And then to Steve's point, several, I think, really well-made points, but I think, the reason this is also exciting is because, like him, I think we're just at that inflection point. And I've often said that in the way that the last 30 years have been dominated by the technology revolution, the next 30 years will be dominated by this kind of bio revolution, really driven by genomics and the data that comes out of it. So maybe I'll just first open the floor here, see if there's anything that sparked a thought in fellow panelists from the opening remarks, whether that's about industry, data, international comparators, or some of our strengths and weaknesses. Does anyone want to pick up on anything before we go to some questions?
I think, Rob, one point I'll very quickly make is Canada historically, at least in the 10 years I've been involved here, the involvement of industry and industry partners in kind of delivering, we're talking about genomics today, so let's just stick to that. So in delivering and helping deliver some of the impact of genomics in Canada has been lacking. When you look at other countries like the UK and Genomics England, UK Biobank, a lot of that was enabled and supported by industry partnerships. And I think it has its roots in what you were saying, investment in R&D at a 1.7%, which is really, really low. So it roots from there, but I think more effort needs to, in my point of view, needs to be made to kind of work more closely in partnership with industry on some of these, delivering some of these true impacts of genomics, for example.
Excellent. Thanks, Naveed.
If I can just comment quickly on that, Naveed, totally agree. And if we can take the example of the UK Biobank, this was like an initiation. It was like built together with the industry, and I think this is the kind of partnership that we need to build, so that like the resource is not only used by industry, but is built by the industry in collaboration with the university. And the government. And this will actually bring a lot of values. This will bring like additional money and resources to be able to build bigger resources. This will also probably address a lot of the issues about like acceptability of sharing the data that are generated by a governmental institution to private sector. So there are a lot of things that needs to be discussed here to have like not only access to industry, but really initiation of a lot of things in collaboration with the industry, so that together we'll be able to build something that makes a real difference for patients and in the agriculture and ecosystem. So I totally agree with that.
Before we get to some of the other questions. Okay, well then I'm sure you'll have plenty to say as we get going here. Let me start by maybe building off of this question. There's a question in the discussion here that ties into this question about kind of the role of industry working with public goods, like for instance open science and open data. The question here is really about the merger of kind of open science and access to the data that we all talk about and industry, but building off of some of the examples in social media and in other examples where data-driven companies like Facebook or Google or what have you, Amazon, are able to use that data to, in effect, become almost like knowledge monopolies that eventually become kind of transnational and are able to evade the kind of national regulation of any given countries. I wonder if we could speak just a little bit to some of the, maybe what some of the risks are, if those risks are genuine, and or what we might think about how to balance the kind of regulatory needs and impulses of a country with the opportunities when it comes to open data. Does anyone want to take a stab at that? It's a tough one. What about,
talking about genetic data?
Yeah, let's talk, I think genetic data in particular, when we're thinking about, because I think we all recognize that there are currently challenges with accessing a lot of the genetic data, genomic data in our healthcare systems. But I think a lot of people feel like probably those regulations and the rules that kind of prevent that sharing are too strict. But if we open it up too much, do we run the risk of creating these monopolies that are using data that's pretty intimate, more intimate even than our shopping data?
Yeah. I think most of us wish we had that problem to deal with. As you said, the data doesn't really exist in Canada, the genomic data yet. This is an issue. There's no big projects like UK Biobank, for example. And if it did, as we've seen in our COVID host genome sequencing project, it's often very challenging to bring it all into one place. It's not insurmountable, but it's tough. We can talk about how we accomplish that, but I was going to actually maybe just flip it a little bit. I think and it comes back to one of the other questions, how do we keep our best talent in Canada? When I was coming out of my academic training in 25 years ago or so, there was a very famous workshop Genome Canada actually organized about 20 years ago. I think it was in Vancouver, and Mark O'Mara just came back to Canada from Wash U. He was part of the sequencing project. He's BC now, of course. And he made a comment about the reason he came back to Canada, and the advice of his supervisor, Bob Waterston, was as a new scientist or any scientist, you need to be close to the technology, right where the technology is. And that's where CFI and Genome Canada were so key. And it caught my attention because that's the same advice I got from my PhD supervisor, Lapchi Choi. You need to be close to technology. Now, the advice that we give our students and trainees is you need to be close to the data. And of course, these are inextricably linked to the data and the technology. So we have to have large data generating projects in Canada based on our own populations, our own environments. And we need to open that up as best we can in the right means. You can define open science in many different ways to Canadian scientists and through partnerships with private sector and international. So that's the key. But the starting point is we really need to have these large data generating projects going on in Canada. We can't just study UK Biobank data. That's great, but we're contributing really to the UK system then. So that's my first comment on that topic. But you're right. There's a whole discussion we have to have of how we're going to manage the data at the hospital level, with respect to privacy and data sharing. And just again, I think Canada has done really, really well here. Participation in the Global Alliance. There's a lot of startup companies I know in Toronto and across Canada working on these aspects of data sharing. In different environments so that we can maximize output. But of course, we can always do better.
So if I can just comment on the technology aspect, I think a lot of the security aspect and the protection of privacy aspects are resolved by technology. And of course, this is not, easy task, but this is technically totally feasible to implement systems that will know not anymore. So you will not be obliged actually to send the data to somebody. Okay, we need to lose this this thing, like, so that we distribute basically the data, and keep them in a single location, and use new technology of distributed computing or federated learning, so that the data are not duplicated, moved, and dispersed. So you know, there are a lot of things that technology can do for protect privacy, private life, and security of the data, that will need a significant investment in technological platform. And the industry, a lot of companies are already ready actually to and have all these standards ready, including us, to protect this data and make sure that the data could be used, accessed, and analyzed by third parties without being moved, copied, or put at risk. So the privacy thing is really, I think, first a technological issue that needs to be resolved. And Navid is the expert in there, so he will be able also to talk about that.
Can I follow Sarah's comment? I don't have a remark. I have more of a question. Because being new to Canada and not being a genomics expert, my question is, why is there an issue or challenge in Canada in terms of supporting or launching these big data projects? Like, what are the barriers? Is it the regulatory environment? Is it infrastructure? Is that known, or is this the opportunity to bring that before?
How many hours do you have, Janetta? We can talk about it. No, but the short answer is funding, and I think it's, as you said, it's from my end at least, it's the right time to cross that barrier as well. We have the infrastructure, we have the will, we have the timing is right, and as Robin mentioned as well in the beginning, for 20 years, the federal provincial governments have been investing in genomics. But I think the way the investment is done, there's probably an opportunity to reevaluate that, and that's what the genomic strategy is about and is doing. It's kind of reevaluate a little bit and see exactly that why have we, if there is areas where we are lacking, why is that and what it requires. From our end, some of the people we talk to, it seems like funding is right now the barrier, because all the other key elements are already there, which have, as Rob said, it's been 20 years in the making, right? So that's one of the challenges. Rob, I just wanted to take an opportunity. So I saw a question in the questions on. It might be a good opportunity to just kind of answer that question because it's already been answered. A question around what can we do more to keep talent in Canada, and I think Steve just and Jenna as well, but Steve hit the nail on the head, is that people want to be close to the facilities, which includes infrastructure, which includes data. The UK Biobank, Genomics England, has done wonders for attracting people to the UK, because people want to be close to places where they can do work based on infrastructure and data. So one of the things, and we've been discussing this, one of the ways to keep the talent in Canada is to provide them with the tools that they can do their research. That includes infrastructure access, that includes data, that includes training. So that's the answer to that question. I thought it would be a good opportunity to just kind of answer that question while we are on the topic.
Well, but just to add to that, though, the best minds they don't care so much how they generate the data. That was in genomics, the purview of the Genome Project. It's not entirely gone away, but they want to see the data for the first time. That's how you make a discovery. And to do that, you need to be close to where the data is being generated, both in the form of generating the hypotheses that are being tested and to have the ethics consent to see it for the first time. Even any open science project, it's not like the Human Genome Project. It doesn't roll into the Ensemble database or whatever it is the same day. You want to be able to see it and structure your project to see that data for the first time. That's how you keep the talent as long as you can. Eventually, they're going to move on in different directions, hopefully into the private sector. And again, I think Canada has done this exceptionally well through building large platform infrastructures like CGen that Naveed has mentioned. I'm the academic lead on that at SickKids here. We have the Genome Sequencing Center in Montreal, also in BC, as Rob mentioned, and there's other large platforms across the country. For genomics, I think this is the time when we'll start to really see the impact. We're ramping up on sequencing. We can now sequence on scale, and in fact, for a gold standard 30x genome, it's in the academic sphere, it's less than $1,000 now. This is really incredible, and we just submitted a proposal to the Canada Foundation for Innovation that within 5 or 6 years, we're looking at maybe $100 genome range, which I think will change science absolutely forever. Where part of every experiment will be to sequence the entire genome, not a gene, the entire genome, and that's going to situate biology where it needs to be to really have a full impact. So I think this is the time. If Canada makes some good investments, we can not just, I wouldn't say we'll get back in the game, we're kind of in the game, but really take the lead because of all the other aspects of the decisions that are being made. It used to be that thoughtful science was not profitable science, but in fact, as we've seen in the environment, thoughtful science can be impact environment, health, and actually give you a competitive edge. And I think this is where Canada can really excel.
So if I could just follow a quick follow-up question. So thanks for all of that. I do want to come back to the talent question, and I know there's still some questions coming in, so this is great. Keep them coming. On this data question, because data has been such a key theme for us, I think it's absolutely the case that we need to do more data generation in Canada. We need to keep that data and make it accessible. I'd like to dig in a little bit more too on some of the systemic challenges that we have, given kind of the fragmented nature of our health research ecosystem in particular, as well as the federated nature of the kind of provincial federal responsibilities. Something that we felt pretty acutely during the COVID crisis. Certainly when it came to sharing kind of the viral sequences, it took a long time to actually get kind of coordination and sharing, not just within Canada, but even to the Open Science International databases. And I know that, on the host side, the project that you've been leading, there was a lot of effort required to, in a sense, bring together a bit of a centralized approach here. So can you think of, are there things that we can do, that is, my sense is it's not a technology problem, that the database building, the actual mechanisms for data transfer, all of that is very straightforward. It has to do with both regulatory elements, but also in a sense kind of a culture and practical element. Can you speak to some of the ways that you've been able to overcome that on the host side, and maybe some lessons that we can use going forward to bring together all these disparate parts?
Yeah, sure. I can take a stab at that, Rob, and others can join. I think for us, and you gave the example of HostSeq, what is part of the CanCoGen initiative that Genome Canada leads, and we're leading the HostSeq, the host genetic side of it as CGen. I think the key for us was the initial work on getting as you say, the legal aspect, the regulatory, and the consent right. That was one of the keys in getting the project set up right, and the ability for the project to be able to share data within the realms of security and privacy, and the ability. So the getting the consent right was not a simple task, and it has obviously levels. Includes education as being a biggest part of the idea that education of not just the participants who want to participate in the project, but also the education of the researchers and the PI who are leading some of these projects, and working very closely with them, making sure that whenever the project is set up at the outright state, is set up in a way which allows for data sharing within the realms of privacy and security. And then once you set, then the second thing comes around privacy and security, as you touched on, and that includes a lot of elements. But some of those are technological challenges which we've been able to overcome really well. not simple, but agreements around data sharing internally, externally, always a challenge, but something that we can overcome. It just requires. Of course, with the specific example of HostSeek, the challenge has been the speed with which we wanted to deliver, because we were in a pandemic situation and we wanted to get the data out to people who can use it. We put the data in the hands of people who would use it. And when it comes to Canada, we pretty much started from zero. We didn't have these national consents. We didn't have this national setup. UK, for example, was at a great advantage of having these infrastructures and these policies already set up to be able to act quickly. Even then, if you talk to people, and Rob, I know you do, and some of us you talk to people in the UK, they've had huge challenges in getting it done at speed, right? So that in this particular example, speed was a challenge that we were able to overcome. And to think about, I mean, we started the go ahead to set up a data bank of 10,000 people affected by COVID-19. And we started pretty much from zero. And today we are sit at where we have over 7,000 samples collected, over 6,000 samples sequenced in the database and already being ready and sharing with people. To come to that within less than 18 months, and some of you have been involved in these big projects, etc., you as well, in various jurisdictions. I think that's phenomenal. And that's something that Canada really needs to be proud of and should build on, right? If we could do it in a pandemic situation at that speed, imagine if we had some time to think about it and then deliver and do it at a bigger scale. So we need to take advantage of that. So yeah, there has been challenges, but we have done very well to overcome them. And to be honest, the key for that is being Canadian, and all hands on deck, and everybody willing to really make it happen. It's been really a collective effort, which has been amazing.
Okay, thanks a lot, Naveed. And certainly some of these issues go well beyond genomics. And I know that there's a new Pan-Canadian Health data strategy kind of working group trying to tackle some of these issues coming out of the pandemic. So let's go back to the talent question, if you don't mind. And Sarah, maybe I'll ask you. Given your space, I know there is a global, kind of competition for talent, top end talent, and whether it's you or your colleagues who are trying to recruit, retain, and train top people, what do you see as maybe some of the barriers or opportunities when it comes to really both developing, but especially retaining and attracting talent here in Canada?
Oh, that's a pretty hot topic right now, actually. This is not only restaurants and industries like that are like having a bad time recruiting people. I can tell you that in the IT industry and the AI particularly, this is quite a tough thing. Of course, the pandemics has brought a side effect that is like the remote work. That has like a huge impact in the ability in Canada to recruit and to retain talent. In the fact that big IT companies, the Amazons, etc., they are starting to recruit everywhere and accept then the talent stay where they are and pay them in US dollars. So of course this is making very unfair competition for smaller countries and Montreal or every countries in Canada actually to attract and to retain these talents. So this is an unresolved problem. This is an additional emerging problem, actually, in the IT sector that I think both academia and startup and smaller company are facing and will continue to face. I don't have the solution yet. We of course need to compete in other factors to have people staying here. Of course, having like appealing projects, and I totally agree about the fact that having data that are rare and having appealing projects with practical application for health and or agriculture is extremely attractive. Actually, we've been able to attract a lot of employees because they really share the vision. They see the impacts, the direct impact on the population, because we're an industry, so we're closer to, like the direct impact on the population. I think like other challenges in education, they will be at university attracted by the prestigious and the fact that, as Stephen said, you want to be the first to touch the data. And actually, if I can just like comment, I'm going a little bit outside of the talent here about what have been said. I think there is the CanCo Gene project is fantastic, and to have like this project actually to be, I'll call it a multi-purpose genomic project that is not like as other genomic project really centered into a specific question that will be answered. And after like the data looks a little bit like less interesting because it has been already analyzed and the question has been answered. And because the data has been tailored toward this question, then probably it's more difficult to use it for something else. Having like this big project, and the UK Biobank is a big example of it. Having this big project with a large cohort that is multi-purpose and multi-usage, and that could be used largely to answer a lot of different questions, I think will be a very, very, very promising avenue to pursue for GC, so that we could have this precious resource that both the academic people will use to answer the specific question, and after the industry will use to also use to answer their specific question at the same time. So having this reflection, this thinking about how could we generate this resource that is not like just like one-time use resource, but really like multi-purpose, multi-usage resource will be a very, very good avenue to look at.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for both of those. Jeanette, I want to give you the chance to weigh in here on either the talent piece in terms of strategies that you're thinking about at Michael Smith, or what you've seen in other places that we might learn from, as well as on this question we've been exploring around data.
I know, thanks, Rob. I was just sitting here reflecting exactly that. I'm like, where do I know of models where this has worked? And some of the ones I'm thinking about, actually have come up around the world. So these so-called centers of excellence, or where you've got these critical mass of really excellent research, really fruitful collaborations, whether it's academic or academic private. I mean, I think that's really key. When I think of, we have the same challenge. We talk a lot about talent retention, recruitment, and so forth in BC and Canada, but this is, as we said, a common around the world. There's two things that for me, I would probably surmise are the challenges. One is hyper competition, and talent coming through the system right now feels that they need some type of competitive advantage in order to survive. And that competitive advantage is probably linked to the second point, which is either access to funding, access to state-of-the-art resources, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I come back to this comment of centers of excellence, so-called centers of excellence, which really for me is about, again, a critical mass of really just, exceptional people who are coming together, bringing a kind of transdisciplinary approaches to solve a problem in a way that would be difficult to solve by any single individual group or team. And I think that's an attractive proposition. So maybe the models I'm thinking of, for example, I mean, in Africa and some of the centers of excellence that have popped up there, in the UK, I can think some, and most recently, I think that's a model worth considering. Now, I know that there are centers here in Canada, of course, but and I think the risk is that, or the criticism could be, well, why put more money give more money to the rich, so to speak. And I think there's some validity potentially in that, but I do think that that's the talent pool is looking for their best options. And if we don't have something on a lot of effort trying to do that, they're just going to go where they think their best options are for them.
That's great. I think it's a great perspective, Jeanette. Anyone want to chime in on that?
Can I jump in on that one?
Steve, I see you nodding there, Steve.
Very nicely positioned. I've been chief of research at SickKids for about 4 months, and very fortunate. About 2 months ago, Newsweek magazine out of the U.S. announced SickKids is the top pediatric hospital in the world, beating out Boston Children's and St. Jude's, etc. So quite interesting. The last 3 recruits we've been able to sign in the last 3 months all commented that they wanted to work at the top hospital in the world, and getting that ranking influenced their decision to come to Canada. They're actually all from out of country, come to Canada. So you're right. We have to have areas of centers of excellence, and it's okay to be Canadian and to be the top. I think, this is a philosophy. Strive for the gold medal is a good thing, because it opens up a lot of other doors that can then have trickle down impact across the entire society. So I completely agree with that. And I wanted to come back very quickly to Sarah's comment, because Rob, you must have been snickering, because everything she said is what I'm constantly hounding you about. Is we need to have our own, population-based sequencing project, or a biobank, a UK biobank, a Canadian biobank project. It's really our aircraft carrier, or will be, or our national railroad, if you want to call it that. It's where we can study our own population's health and environmental impact, and of course environment. And you do it at the level of the clinical data, which allows immediate buy-in from the provinces, anchored in genomics, which builds on the 20 years of investment that Genome Canada and CFI and CHR and others have made. It's the perfect solution to drive, science and our health forward. It has to happen. And it was, as I referred to in my opening comment, we have everything in place. We just need a visionary at the top of the government to bring this into place. Many of us know how to do it. We need the nod to do it, and the money.
Awesome.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay, understood. I'm familiar with that argument. So the and I agree. I think it's we certainly have our particular challenges in Canada, but there's no reason that we can't bring that to fruition, and hopefully the Pan-Canadian Genomics strategy becomes a vehicle to really help push that forward. I want to pick up on two things, maybe that kind of build on that. The first has to do with, so I hear the conversation. I understand this notion of creating centers of excellence, but as Jeanette kind of raised this issue of what happens if you're in a sense perpetuating kind of the power structures? How do you make sure you're diversifying both the people who are participating, but also the people who are going to be benefiting from the investments and impacts? So this is really about kind of expanding, in a sense, the stakeholder community, how we can get more voices to the table to help, in a sense, maybe diversify the types of questions we're asking. I know that all of you in your various institutions have initiatives underway to do this sort of thing. But I wonder if you could just maybe speak about how to both reinforce the centers of excellence while at the same time expanding the inputs in terms of who we're working with and who we're talking to. Does someone want to maybe pick up on that?
Rob, is it okay if I jump in first? Yeah, because I put forward this notion of excellence, knowing that I've also been a public critic of the notion of excellence. So I feel compelled to probably respond to my own comment. And I'll explain what I mean in a minute. So I would offer, I think, in terms of the Pan-Canadian Genomics strategy, I think three things in terms of supporting equity, diversity, inclusion. And the one is that to give ED&I and social justice prominence in the strategy, not just to say it, it's not just words, but to back it by allocating financial investment that will enrich representation and participation from those underserved communities, populations, and so forth. So not just words, put money behind those words. The second thing I would offer is meaningfully engage members of underserved communities, networks, collaboratives in the production of research and innovation, and to act to support fair and equitable partnerships. Making sure that when those individuals are invited to the table, they actually have a voice, they have an opportunity to influence, they actually can benefit from the outcomes of that. And the last, I would say, which really speaks to this notion of excellence, is recognizing, incentivizing, and rewarding range of contributions to research and innovation and the institutions that are producing it, according to the context in which those knowledge is needed, produced, and used. And I think this is where the notion of excellence is flawed, because it's defined by kind of Western notions of excellence and not enough about inclusive excellence, which is really about making sure that the voices, the perspectives, the experience of those who could potentially benefit and be served by this are actually part of developing those solutions.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeanette. I really appreciate that. Someone else want to pick up on that? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Sarah?
Yeah, well, actually, recently we have like this innovation center, which is like more like not really a center of excellence in an academic fashion, but more like how do we put together an ecosystem, including university for training of talent, plus hospital, plus so in the zone d'innovation santé in Montreal. We have like the pharmaceutical, we have the hospitals, we have the university to train the talent. You have like all the med tech and the startup and the accelerator and all this continuum of innovation pieces that are required to end up with creation of innovation and implementation in the hospital. So I think if we want to move into a practical approach of genomics, probably we need to have like a less academically centered option of excellence and really move into ecosystems that are more like a continuum from the training of students up to the implementation of a product into an hospital. So I will like it better than the center of excellence for this reason.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. Steve?
I really think this is Genome Canada's competitive edge. So, for 20 years, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, GEOLS, but the ethics, economics,
Environment,
legal, and environment. In a way, you've funded, every project had to have a component of these in their studies, and they are the foundational basis for how I define equity, diversity, and inclusion. In a way, it's a natural extension. So there's a lot of lessons learned of how to pull this off in Genome Canada's playbook. So I think that's a very important point, and that should be positioned with the government, that this is a natural vehicle to take things to the next level, the right level. But just to remind everyone, and I always write this in my grants, is the basis of biological diversity is genetics, right? So in fact, the science we all perform, funded by Genome Canada and other CIHR and others, is the study of diversity. That's what geneticists do. And genomics is really the study of the genetics of populations, which can wrap in all of the other social, cultural aspects and things. So in a sense, the science of equity, diversity, inclusion is, I see it as genomics. So these have to go hand in hand. And I think that's how it should be positioned. And that again gives Canada a competitive edge because of how science is funded. So I see that this really is the time. This is Canada's time to take things to the next level.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Naveed, did you want to get in on this, or there's already been a lot said?
No, I just had a very quick point on the center of excellence, and I couldn't. I have to make it. So the idea of center of excellence, it's a great idea in the now when you think about it, and delivering some of the impacts and ideas that we have and looking at it. But I think we've been there before, and in Canada, and it has to accompany with a very clear vision of sustainability planning, right? Rather than just creating something in the now and then not having a clear path of how to sustain some of these or review and sustain some of these things. So I think when it comes to a center of excellence, great idea, but something that needs more serious thought or more long-term thought. In the way of EDI and equity, I agree with all the panelists that I think Canada has a huge advantage on various levels, including our population, including the way we fund science, including the way we have been funding science, and it has to be part of everything we do. It's not a one angle or one stop shop in coming at it from one point and looking at case study. It really has to be at the heart of everything we do to take advantage of the true diversity that is in Canada and attraction to people from outside of Canada. So again, I'll go back to where my head usually is at and talk about genomic large-scale data. People from outside of Canada get excited about when you talk about a Canadian population data set because of knowing the diversity in the Canadian population. We talk about the UK Biobank, other places where the diversity is sometimes questionable or is an issue. So as Steve and Jenna and Conchetta said, that I think taking advantage of the Canadian diversity is absolutely prime. Genome Canada has done fantastic in the future. Just need to, again, my point of building on it. It's not that we haven't done it. It's a huge opportunity to build on what we have.
Yeah, thanks, Naveed. And I think just a couple of quick comments that I totally agree with all of that. And I think that, we as a community have a responsibility to be very deliberate about making sure that we are filling some of the gaps that exist in as sort of the data or in some of the projects. And that's something I sort of mentioned off the top. And I think, this Center of Excellence is, we've kind of maybe gone a little bit kind of on the side on this. I think the idea of world-class, kind of nodes where you have critical mass to attract talent and to do things are absolutely crucial. And those things evolve over time. So as a community, we have not only the responsibility, to your point, Naveed, of supporting those that exist now, but of identifying the emerging ones that we can nurture and build strength to attract kind of that next generation who are going to be looking for that critical mass. And then finally, Steve, to your point, the GELS, which acronym I'm always nervous about getting wrong because I really should get it right, which is the genomics and its ethical, environmental, economic, legal, and social aspects, is something that I often, when I talk to government in particular, genomics isn't just technology. Genomics isn't just the sequencing. Genomics encompasses the responsible use of the knowledge and technologies that come out of that, and that's something that we have researchers who do that specifically, but we all have a collective responsibility for it, certainly as we go forward. There's no doubt. So there's been a few questions I think we've addressed, kind of around kind of on the open science and IP and commercialization piece. If anyone has any specific ideas they want to contribute to that, we're going to be doing maybe some closing remarks in a couple of minutes. Also, just want to flag that, the focus today has really been on health genomics and human genomics. Of course, at Genome Canada, we do a lot more than just that, and genomics is a big space. And so there are applications here when it comes to environment and biodiversity and climate. There are applications when it comes to agriculture. We haven't touched on those things, but a lot of the issues we discussed today are very similar. And I know, to Sarah's point, competing with, big AI companies, I know this is the same thing when, genomics and health economists or agricultural genomicists trying to compete, with big players, big banks, and so on. It's very difficult in both attracting and retaining talent in those spaces as well. So I think we're heading towards the last sort of 10 minutes or so. I want to give everyone a chance just to maybe provide some closing remarks, either to pick up on some things that you didn't have a chance to discuss, or to leave us with some final thoughts as we continue the dialogue around what a pan-Canadian strategy might look like. So why don't we go in maybe reverse order from the questions? Janetta, do you want to lead us off with maybe some closing thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a lot to really add. I think, there's some really good ideas that have been generated around the table. There's some really excellent examples around the world. I think it really takes Canada to ask, to kind of turn the mirror on itself and say, what is Canada willing to do to step up in order to be able to demonstrate that global leadership? And that's going to require significant commitments, funding, and everything we discussed, commitment to ED&I. It's obvious what there is to do. It's just a matter, in my view, of getting it done. And I think the only other thing I would say that, is just to be mindful of that there's a much broader group of stakeholders that really need to be part of this conversation. And I think it's really important to make sure that's, certainly the public voice that's not on this panel. There's certainly the patient voice that's not on this panel. And a lot of, the researchers who are actually at the cold face of this work. So that would be my only kind of last reflection. Thanks, Rob.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Janetta. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think I will, just iterate one point about big project of the Canadian genomics, but maybe extended to like the importance of moving into like multi-omic and not only genomic data for this plan, and the fact that this big and ambitious and costly project should involve the industry and will really benefit from involving the industry from the very, very beginning to make it happen. And for the benefits of the research and of the translation. And I will just say a word of things that I didn't say. We're working a little bit in agriculture. I can see like the impact of agriculture data, the genomic and usage of genomic data in agriculture is probably a little bit behind what is done in Earth, and like there is a pressing need actually for generating data, particularly with the global warming and the accelerated warming that we're experiencing in Canada. So that efforts are done to make sure to help all the effort that is done to cope for that.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And that's a really great perspective. And I agree. I think we could restart the panel and have a cool conversation about agricultural genomics and the opportunities that exist there, certainly when it comes to both data generation and data use and collaboration with industry, but also globally. So thanks for raising that. Steve, how about you? Some parting thoughts?
Yeah, it's a new world. We're just coming out of COVID and post-COVID, if you want. I hate the term post, but think of it like post-genomics. We're in a new world now, people thinking differently. This issue of people working remotely can be turned into a positive if they're working in Canada for a US company, as long as they're increasing the tax base of Canada. It's more dollars for the government to spend on research. It's the way I see it. It may be strategic. At least you still have these people close to you, and you can maybe have them affiliated with your institution or whatever. But just need to think completely open-minded in a very creative and entrepreneurial way of how we can move forward in a positive way after, as we start to move beyond COVID. I did want to say one closing comment, though. We started with this. I think what the United Kingdom did right several years ago was, in part because of the Wellcome Trust, it was actually probably driven by the Wellcome Trust, but the government around the Genome Project, and then things like Genome England, UK Biobank, etc., was to convince the public that genomics is your friend. Actually, it can help you. And in Canada, I think we've seen the mentality that science has become your friend, or through COVID, and now we need to make it clear that genomics is your friend too. And if we can be the second country really to adopt that, it's not going to happen in the States, I don't think. We can move the whole agenda forward. I think we're pretty much there. And just to remind everyone that we have a Genetic Non-Discrimination Act in place in Canada that should protect all of its citizens from exploitation of this information. So that was a key success in I think Canadian history, science history, and legal history. So anyways, I think this is a very exciting time for us. I'm so happy to be here and having an impact pushing this forward. But let's strive for excellence on this and move to the top of the world.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. And finally, Naveed.
So I'm just going to echo what others said. Canada is very well positioned in taking advantage of, the power and promise of genomics. And the current events of the last 18 months or 2 years have really put genomics at the forefront of all the public policy discussions, right? But it has also provided Canada with an opportunity to show that we can do as good as, or even better than other jurisdiction, other countries, when it comes to taking advantage of the power and promise of genomics. So as Steve said, it's a very exciting time. We just need to continue to push for excellence in Canada, and it's the right time to do it. And probably this is my last chance to speak as well, Rob. I also want to congratulate you and Genome Canada for putting such a critical discussion together. I think it's been a really good discussion in moving, as Steve said, in moving the topic forward. And thank you for allowing us to be part of this discussion too. Thanks, Rob.
Well, thank you, Naveed. Yeah, this has been a really good discussion. I appreciate everyone's perspectives. I think a few of the things, certainly the themes that came through very, very strongly for me were, the need to really focus on the generation, development, and use of data resources in a way that can benefit, the sort of public health or public use like health, for instance, but also industrial use. Certainly, talent attraction and retention, and those two things can often go sort of side by side in a kind of a virtuous circle. So I think that is going to have to be right at the core of this strategy. The idea of being able to support our current, sort of areas of strength, centers of excellence, nodes of critical mass, what have you. But I'll do that alongside the ability to identify new and emerging ones. Obviously super important. There were some questions and comments about how to handle maybe kind of IP and open science, but I think the recognition there is that genomics is going to drive huge industrial opportunity, and we need to make sure that we're capturing that in a way. I think those are all really, really great. I think, and I can't speak for the government of Canada, but I suspect that all of those things are going to be front and center in the strategy. I know that I will say that I've been doing this for a while now. And I have never seen the kind of receptivity in senior levels of government that we have right now when it comes to recognizing the potential of genomics to deliver, and not just in the COVID moment, but beyond. I think the investments we're seeing now around biomanufacturing and other life sciences, biomedical research, as well as this pan-Canadian strategy, are really creating a moment for genomics and related sciences in Canada, and something that we need to certainly take advantage of. We can build on strengths, fill up some gaps, but it's a major opportunity, to Steve's point. And I'd even go so far as to say it's not just an opportunity, but a necessity. But building on top of all of that, phenomenal research, phenomenal data, tackling some of the policy and regulatory issues. There's also the need for leadership and speaking with a voice. I would note that in the UK, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Prime Minister David Cameron who was a real champion for these initiatives that led to a lot of this kind of investment to there. And so I think what we can do in terms of recruiting support will be absolutely crucial when it comes to ongoing leadership. And now is the time to do that. So big opportunities for us. I want to just first let everyone know that we will continue this dialogue. We at Genome Canada are hosting another event on November 30th. You can go to our website, genomecanada.ca. There's a town hall. You're all invited. It's another discussion, just really trying to sort of increase the conversation around the future of genomics in Canada in support of this. And we will be sure to build on a lot of the really great comments from a stellar lineup of panelists today. I want to thank Chinetta, Sarah, Steve, and Naveed for the time and your expertise today. I thank you for all the work you're doing in this area and look forward to continuing the conversation with each of you and everybody else here online. So thanks all. Thanks to CSPC for giving us the space, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.